Jæja, velkomin á Málstofu Hafrannsóknastofnunar. Í dag það yfir að fá hér hingað inn á stofnunina gest Mikko Vihtakari sem sérfræðingur hjá norsku Hafrannsóknastofnuninni. En hann sérhæfir sig í rannsóknum á djúpsjó og brjóskfiskum. En bakgrunnur hans í tölfræðilegri greiningu á sjávarvistfræðilegum gögnum og þessar myndir að vinna með stofnmat gráluðu ásamt öðrum tegundum og ef ég skila rétt þá hann hér einmitt í þeim erindagjörðum að fá aðstoð við það. Mikko hefur einnig smíðað töluvert af tölfræðipökkum í forritamálinu R sem hann mun kynna hérna eftir. Fyrri hlutinn sem ívið styttri ætla Mikko að fara bara gegnum það sem hann hefur gert hingað til. En svo breytist þetta aðeins og verður svona í formi spurninga, Q&A. Þannig að þið eru þáttakendur núna í fyrirlesturunum hans. I noticed there are a lot of non-Icelandic speaking people in the back. I just briefly introduced Mikko. He's going to introduce some of his early stuff. And then quickly we will switch into a Q&A. So you guys are participating in this talk, which is a new thing in this seminar. With no further ado, Mikko, the floor is yours.
Yes, as he said, I would like to keep this interactive. So I'll just give you a little introduction of my background, and then after that we can look at our packages, and you can decide what we look at. And we take it based on that. So I'm a researcher at the Institute of Marine Research in Norway. I count myself as a numeric marine ecologist. I'm originally from Finland, but I have been living in Tromsø almost 20 years. So I'm based there. And I have a master's degree in fish biology and fisheries, and then a PhD in Arctic marine biology. And my work at the moment is mostly focused on the guy on the left there, or on the left there, Greenland halibut. And it is mostly by computer. But I'm quite interested in nature too, and I am a research diver. So whenever I get a chance, I sneak out and try to help people doing their dive projects, then we have some troll surveys where I am attending. And now recently we got the funding for a shark project, which I will tell a little bit more about. So I started doing my master's thesis on Svalbard on population dynamics of amphipods, and that's where I started to use R. We were in this small research camp north of Iceland, north of Svalbard, alone, and we looked at amphipods with microscope and identified the species and looked at the length and all that. And then I did my PhD on geochemistry of bivalve shells and ocean acidification. And I was sitting a lot in a lab and next to a computer there too, and doing R programming. And then after that, I worked as a freelance statistician and researcher and scientific diver, mostly for Norwegian Polar Institute, for a couple of years, until I got this job I have now at IMR. So one project we have is the Greenland halibut project to resolve the population structure in North Atlantic. And this is in collaboration with Iceland here and Greenland, Denmark, Canada, Faroes. And we recently published a paper about this where we showed that Greenland halibut are moving all over the place. And then we have a couple of genetic papers that are coming out soon, and which show also that there is not very much population structure of Greenland halibut. So we can quite safely say that the Icelandic population and the Norwegian population are the same. But they are, of course, managed differently. And that brings me to why I'm here. I'm here to meet Bjarki and Will, who are the gurus in Gadget 3, which is stock assessment or ecosystem model. And they are teaching me how to use the model and how to make a model for the Norwegian, the Russian stock of Greenland halibut. And the benchmark is in Iceland next year, so I'll be back then. And here on the background you see the initial model results, which are not very promising, but we hope that it will improve. And then we got funding from Norwegian Research Council for a SARC project, which started this year, where we are trying to examine examining the overlap between SARC habitat use and human activities, which means basically fisheries and aquaculture. We have these three SARC species: porbeagle, basking shark, and spurdock we are working with. And there is a PhD student in that project. So I'll be focusing on that a little bit more when I'm done with benchmark. Yeah, as was said, I'm also R developer, so I have many packages online. One of them, I think the most, I don't know, the only one that's on Gran and is at the moment is called GG Ocean Maps, and that makes what it says. It makes maps of ocean with ggplot. There's another one which uses the same algorithms, and with that you can make strata and based on depth in different areas around the world. And that is something we have used to make our survey indices now for the new assessment. It seems to work quite well, and I would like to show that to you, so I think that will be helpful for some of you. And then we have I have something that's called GC fish plots, which is mostly for this gadget model we are developing. You need the life history parameters from data, so this plots them and gives you them. Of course, yeah, it's all in development, so the result is varying. And then there is something I was doing in Norwegian Polar Institute when I was working there was GG ocean plots, which is all kinds of oceanographic plots, so DS plots and section plots and all that. But that package is pretty much there just to be used. I haven't done anything to it because I haven't needed it myself. And all these packages, they are not by no means closed. So if somebody is interested to be involved in development, you're more than welcome. It's open source programming, so everybody is welcome to contribute, and all the contributions will be acknowledged with authorship in those packages, or major contributions at least. So that's it. Now I think if we could look at these packages online. I was thinking maybe go in this order, but we can also go another order. What do you think? First with GG Ocean Maps and then, yeah? Okay, so GG Ocean Maps is on Gran, which means that it also has quite good documentation. So everything is online. So if you Google GG Ocean Maps, you will get the Gran page, and then you hit link there, you will get on this web page, which has my name. I don't like it. I think it would be better to have something else, but it just ended up being that. And yeah, can be changed. So in here you get the overview, how to install it, and use it roughly. And then there are some details which you can read at your own time. One important thing is that this uses open data, and some of the open data have license where you're supposed to cite the data. So if you use this package, please cite the data that you used. And the package is quite clear which data are used in which areas and all that. So basically you just have to cite this paper. That's it, if you use the standard. But there's different options, so you can choose. And then there is a user manual, which tells you how to use it from beginning until, so it builds up. The base function here in GT Ocean Maps is called base map, and that makes a map. And then you plot your data on top of that. So that's the kind of principle, and it all works in ggplot. So if you're familiar with ggplot, you should be able to do this in no time. It's the syntax is the same, except anything inside base map. There are some little differences, and they are told in this manual. For example, you can tell how to define the limits. That's not so simple because longitude latitude is actually made for sphere. So when you try to put it in 2D, you are never going to get the same limits than you specify, unless your plot is not square. So if it would be a slice, then you would get same. And one thing I think many people are asking a lot or often is that how to add a fill scale on top of bathymetry. So there is instructions how to do that nowadays. I added it there because I got this email every second week. So you can do it. The bottom line is that you use a package called GT NewScale, which does it for you. You can't do it in ggplot as it is. And then you have the reference, which is common for tidyverse. You can just click these buttons here and see all the parameters and see examples. Oh, the examples are not plotted now. I see. Yeah, I'll fix that. That's a grand thing. But then normally the examples would be plotted here too. And then there is another function which is quite central, is QMap. And this is designed, so if you have a data frame which has longitude, latitude coordinates, you write QMap and the name of that data set, or the object name, and you're supposed to get a map. So it just shows you quickly where your data are. I bet that the examples are not plotted. Well, there is one. Yeah, and that's about it. And then there are some articles. If you want to look at what, I think it's this. So if you want to look at which, what kind of maps are there, you can look here. These are available. There was somebody from Iceland who sent me an email about detailed map of Iceland. And I think there was some polygon issues with that map. I'm not sure if they ever got solved. But yeah. But I know that you also have an open data service in Iceland where you can get the polygons that this package needs. Yeah. Anyway, there they are. And then there is one more thing, is all the presentations I have about this package I put here. So there is a workshop. If you click here, you get slides. And there is a poster, which I'm going to present in 2 weeks about the SART project and GT Ocean Maps. So if you have to remember something from here, it's base map and Q map. That's it. And the website. Some questions or something?
Didn't you have anything on shape files in articles?
Yeah, so the shape files are, so how this package works is that it's here. So it uses raster data and it polygonizes the raster data, which means that you can decide yourself what are the intervals in your bathymetry. So for example, if you want to have from 10 to 20 meters, you just make a shapefile that is like that, and then you plot it.
Yeah, but where do you get these shape files? Is that
It makes it.
It makes it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But the grid files, the bathymetric grid, that comes from open data repositories.
yeah.
So there is the KEPCO, and then there is the eTopo. So KEPCO is the British version, which is 25 arc seconds, I think. And then eTopo is 1 arc minute. And then there are some other options. Is the RMOD. So it's some European thing, which is the most or the finest. And if you have, for example, if you would make a grid out of your bathymetry data from all your vessels, you could use it here to make shapefiles and then plot it. But those shapefiles are stored internally in a package called GGOSMM's large data, which is automatically downloaded. So when you want to have some certain shapefile, it goes online or asks you, can I download, and then it downloads it. But when you want to modify shapefiles, you have to do them yourself. And the instructions are there. Something else? Come on. No?
No more questions? Erki, talaði í mikrofon.
Yeah. So I guess you shared this with your colleagues. Is it started to get much use, this package in at IMR?
Yeah, it seems to be used. Yeah.
So we expect to see more reports based on this package.
Yeah, and then when people are nice enough and cite it, they don't always cite it, but when they do, then I get alarm about it, and then I can look how did they use it, which is quite nice. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the only GRAN package I have at the moment, and I don't know how long it lives in GRAN. GRAN is quite difficult sometimes. So. But, so you can, in theory, you can just install it using install packages. Was that it? Let's look at another one. Or, yeah. So these are then not GRAN packages, which means that you have to install them from GitHub. And I think by now everybody is quite used to that, right? You just write DevTools, install GitHub, and then where it is. And then it compiles it from source, which means that Windows users might be in trouble sometimes. But in these packages, I haven't used any C++, so it should be all right. So this one. So we had this problem that all our strata systems we used were non-reproducible. They were made by some guy in 90s. And that guy had already resigned or got on the pension, and nobody knew what the strata systems actually were. And in addition, the areas of those strata seem to be just quite random. So somebody had just made up area. Okay, this is the area for that strata. And it was not possible to reproduce that. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about now, is in survey indices, so you try to estimate how much fish there is in the sea. And you say that, okay, in this area, there is equally many fish in general. And then you take samples, say you take several samples from that area, and you take the average of those samples, and that is the average abundance of fish in that area. And then you multiply the area by the abundance. And that is the number of fish in that area. It's simple as that. That's called the swept area method. So, and then that's why the area is quite important. So what this does then is that, this article is not finished, but so what you can do is you define something I call geostrata, which are the geographic boundaries of different areas. And this is kind of proxy of longitudinal or latitudinal gradient. So in many species, they are more abundant in the north or more abundant in the south or east or west or whatever. So you use these boxes to simulate that. And then there is something that everybody knows. If you have been fishing, that fish live in different depths. So depth is the most important or the best explanator of fish abundance, I think, in the world. So if you use the geostrata plus depth, you can kind of simulate different areas where the fish exist. And that's what it does. So you give it the geostrata, you tell it, okay, here's the bathymetric grid to use. I use KEPCO most of the time. And then it calculates you the strata when you tell the depth intervals. And it returns those as shape files, and then you can use them. And there is lots of options then which you can use to improve your strata. So you can remove these little crumbs and all that, and yeah, that's about it. The documentation is not perfect, so you need to, but it does tell you how to do it. And then there is a gallery of examples here. So you can look how to reproduce this. There's one for Greenland, none for Iceland at the moment. I believe Bjarki will make some. Yeah, so that's that. Any questions?
So I guess this aligns well with the workflow that you're building with stocks as well.
Yes.
So going from this, how easy is it to go from what you're doing here, and pushing that into stocks? Is it an easy workflow that you can?
Yeah, there is a function that exports it in this format that stocks wants. But now I changed stocks so that it also takes direct those. So yes, it's easy. So for those who haven't been working with these things, there is something called shapefile. It's a file system made by somebody ages ago. There are 5 different files in that, and one contains those polygons. It's basically it's just coordinates, like where the polygon goes, and if they go clockwise, it's a shape. And if they go counterclockwise, it's a hole. So you can have a donut. So you go clockwise, and then you have a smaller one counterclockwise. You get donut. And that's how you export them normally. It takes a lot of space, but yeah.
Does that then go directly? I mean, I assume that you can either use that directly into the RStock GUI, the stocks GUI, or
Yes.
and that just feeds well into that. So if you define your start system there, and then you can push that over to to stocks quite easily.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can also do it yourself. So you can use SF packets. These are SF shapes. So you just use the SF packets and do it yourself. So you use the over function to see if where your sampling points are. And then you get that. Something else? No. Next. I think it's confusingly enough, it's somewhere here. Oh, did I put it here? Maybe I put it here. Yeah, it's there. Okay, so the last one I believe will be useful. I heard that somebody has used this already. Nice. So this is a package that is supposed to plot or produce life history parameters for you. But not only produce them, because I think it's more important to plot them than to get the parameters, so see how the data are. So it makes you a plot, and then it gives you parameters. So you just feed in your data and tell which column is what, and then you get, for example, growth curve. Then it also exports the coefficients here. So you can use that to make life history parameters for your model. And you can split by sex. You can't split by anything else at the moment, but there was a suggestion to do that. So if somebody wants to, have a feature, you can send the code in GitHub and I can put it in. It's no problem. It's just that I don't have time to do everything. So, yeah. And there is this this thing I made to it because often we have. This is a bad example because there is lots of small fish, but often we lack the small fish. But we know kind of when they recruit. So we can say that, okay, use the recruitment length and then add some random variation around that. So add certain standard deviation of variation around that and then add those fish into 0. So for example here, I have said the force 0 group is 10, and then it adds fish to 10 centimeter, which makes which improves the estimation of L-inf, because you kind of curve the thing better. And then there is also option to decide how many % of the total data you want to add. I don't remember what it is. It's probably set to 10% or something. And there's also option to define the standard deviation, or I think it's coefficient of variation. But there are standard values for those. And I haven't thought through the standard values, I just put them in, so they might be wrong. And then there is a plot to get maturity estimates, so maturity archives. And I think this has the same function now. So you can add immature fish in there. If you are totally sure that these fish are immature and you lack them, you can add them. But of course you are making up data. So that's what modeling pretty much is. And then length weight. And length weight. Yeah, that's it. Any questions about this? Comments? We can add more plots there if there is some needs.
Hi. So we had a brief discussion about this package earlier. So you were explaining to me that you were improving how you select a growth model.
Yeah, well, it's not part of this package because
Yeah.
this package doesn't select growth models. But yeah.
Yeah, but could you go through that again? I couldn't really hear you out there.
So what happens here is that these growth models, so this is a standard kind of IMR data. So we have that much data. That's like incredibly many points and lots of fish that died. But in some cases, especially in the tropics, you have maybe 20 fish. And if you try to fit a non-linear model to 20 data points, and if even one of those points is a bit off, your model is not going to converge. So there is a package, which I don't remember now which one it was called, which sets so you can use the start parameters. So there are these SS functions in R, where you try to estimate start parameters for nonlinear models. And then there is a rule how to estimate these parameters. I think it's in fish space or something. So you can use this SS function to estimate good start parameters. And then it converges much better. So that's one thing.
So you use the start parameters to just give it a...
Yeah, to make it converge. Yeah.
Give it a framework.
Because now I have some default parameters there, but I think, yeah, so the linf is the maximum length of fish in the datasets, for example, and things like that. But it doesn't seem to be good enough for small datasets, always. And then growth model comparison is a whole other issue. It's quite complicated. Or I don't know, complicated quite, but there are so many different ways of doing it. And some ways say that, no, don't worry, there is no difference. And then when you start looking at the data, there is actually difference. So using the parameter confidence intervals, for example, here, that's not a good way to compare growth models because it's a nonlinear function with 3 variables. So you can have quite many different iterations of those values and still get the same, almost the same curve where it matters, but still the parameters can be quite different. And so it's better to use model selection for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's it.
No questions?
I think I skipped the last package because it's not really been used.
Thank you, Mikko. Tack. Kippis.